Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending where you're joining us from in the world today. We appreciate your attendance and hope to deliver a valuable session to you on this day. We will be undergoing this session, Co-Creation, the Lego Story, presented by Martin Kornberger, Professor of Management Innovation at MBA Business School. My name is Nihat Ben-Central, here at the IB Exec, and I'll be helping to moderate today's session. Before we begin, I just want to go over very quickly a few housekeeping items for the audience. First, all attendees are currently in listen-only mode. However, we do encourage you to participate in the session by asking questions to our presenter. You can do this through the question box in the GoToWebinar control panel located on either the left or the right-hand side of your screen. And just so you're aware, we do welcome questions throughout the presentation, and Martin will do his best to field them as they come in. I'll be moderating those, and we want to make this as organic a session as possible. So please do ask questions as the slides pass by. In addition, and the final point, we shall be recording today's session, so you can look forward to receiving a copy of the recording via email in the coming days. And to start things off, I'll be passing you over to Anna Powells, who is the Marketing Recruitment Manager at EMLYON Business School, who will kick things off and then formally introduce Martin. Anna?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You're loud and clear. Go ahead.
Wonderful. So everyone, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. Now, can you all see me as well?
Yes, they can. You're all set on that front too.
Okay, wonderful. Just wanted to make sure about that. So I'd like to introduce, first of all, EMLYON Business School to you all. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. We're very excited to be able to present this to you. We do apologize about the change of date as well. So EMLYON Business School was established in Lyon, France in 1874. It was a school established by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. And it still really strongly holds this image of being all about entrepreneurship and helping people succeed in that matter. Now, in this case, not everyone necessarily wants to be an entrepreneur, but it's more about giving you an entrepreneurial mindset to be able to come up with creative solutions to problems and to be able to make the most of opportunities. We offer a number of programs. We have 5 campuses around the world, notably in Lyon and in Paris, and we have over 5,000 executive participants per year around the world. We have a great incubator, which is one of the oldest incubators in France, with over 200 projects set up already, with an 85% success rate in 3 years. So the programs that we're presenting to you today, first of all, we have our full-time MBA program, which is based here in Lyon. Now, Lyon is the 3rd biggest city in France. It's a city that is growing rapidly and was voted one of the best city in France for quality of life recently by the Economist Intelligence Unit. Our full-time MBA is a 12-month program with 1 intake per year. One of the differences, particularly between our program and others, is that we have a very small cohort, which you can see in the photo, which has a lot of diversity, not only cultural, but also professional. So not only do the students learn from professors and from speakers, but most certainly from each other. You have to have an average of 7 years work experience, our students do, I'm sorry, and it's also a general management program where you have the opportunity to specialize. 2 important parts of the program are certainly our entrepreneurial leadership project, where you work with a 9-month consultancy project with a company here in Lyon or in Paris. And every Tuesday is dedicated to careers, where you'll be having a variety of conferences and workshops, as well as working with a mentor one-to-one and alumni as well. Our next program is our Executive MBA, which is taught either in Paris or in Lyon, and you can do this program in English or in French, part-time or full-time as well, as you wish. There is an average of 14 years experience in our classroom, and it's for managers who already have senior experience and who have a strategic position in their company. We have recently changed this program, and now there are 2 parts to it. The first part is the core courses, where you have the opportunity to really learn about business transformation and give you the tools to be able to implement that into your company or entrepreneurial project. And in the second half, you can actually choose a Maker's Bridge specialization, depending on what kind of position you have or you wish to obtain. So we have the corporate executives who wish to climb the corporate ladder, corporate entrepreneurs who are looking to develop innovation in their company, SME managers who wish to become CEO or help in growing their small, medium enterprise, and entrepreneurs who have a project they wish to develop. If you have any other questions about our program, please do not hesitate to contact our recruitment managers, Jack for the full-time MBA and Safa for the executive MBA. Their information will be given to you at the end of the presentation as well. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Martin Kornberger to you all. Who's a professor here at EMLYON Business School, and I'll allow him to introduce himself and tell you a little bit more about him and also the subject that he'll be speaking about today. So thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you for the nice introduction and for the nice setup from IBXEC. And yeah, fantastic to be here. It's great to have the opportunity to talk to you all wherever you are. We are here in Lyon. It's late in the evening, or kind of not that late, a little bit late. It's definitely very cold outside, so I hope you had a nice warm spot and not as freezing as we are here outside. Just briefly about myself, a little bit of background. You see here a little map of the world, and right in the middle is where I was born, in Austria, where I also studied at the university in Vienna. Kind of finished my PhD there in 2002. Then I went up in the alphabet, sort of one layer, and went from Austria to Australia, sort of all the way down to your right, and worked there for 10 years at the University of Technology in Sydney. I started my own business there, which we sold successfully 3-4 years ago, and we stayed down there until 2010. Then we moved back to Europe. I took on a job at Copenhagen Business School and spent 6 years up there. And finally, sort of, we kind of tried to settle for a place that is really well, a fantastic university, really a fantastic business school that is on the go, where interesting things happen. And at the same time, we were looking for quality of life and doing this little 2x2 matrix. We ended up with Lyon as kind of in the top right box. And we moved here sort of 1 year ago, and we have not looked back yet. It's a fantastic city to live. And it's a really entrepreneurial school with lots of interesting research. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about this kind of research that we're doing here, the things we are concerned with, the things that we try to figure out, and hoping that they resonate with where you are in your careers, and that they really help you to rethink kind of business opportunities and how you address and approach challenges in the 21st century. On that note, sort of without any further ado, I'll kind of start with our actual story. Sort of before we go into that, though, maybe one last remark, as said before. If you have any questions, or if there's anything that you would like to kind of know or say, or just throw into the debate, please feel free to do so. It's nice if we can have an interaction here on this channel, and not just me talking to you. So really feel free to interrupt, to ask questions, and to speak your mind as we go along. Well, as said, I'm a scientist. I work here mainly as a researcher. I also teach on the MBA, the EMBA program. But as a researcher, I'm kind of a curious person. So we're trained to ask questions. I think we're the only profession in the world that is really happy about problems and finding interesting problems. And this is a quote from a fellow French scientist, from Claude Lévi-Strauss, who said, a scientist is not a person who gives the right answers, but he's one who asks the right kind of questions. And I think this is really what we want to focus here in our research, in this talk today, but of course also in the MBA programs. What are the kind of things that we should be concerned with, that we should worry about? And I'm going to throw one of those questions at you for today. It looks like a very simple question, a deceivingly simple question. But as we go through trying to answer it, we'll see it's actually a fairly tricky question. These are Lego bricks, and you might have kids that play with Lego. You might have played with Lego yourself when you were younger. You might still play with Lego. In any case, you probably know that Lego is a fairly expensive toy. The interesting thing is that it is very cheap to produce. So a kilo of Lego costs about $1 to produce. So that's the price of the raw material. When you buy it in the shop, as I do for my kids that are 3 and 6 years old, so we buy a lot of Lego, I really suffer always through that moment when you pay $75 per kilo of Lego when you buy it in the shop. So the interesting question is, what happens in between? How does Lego manage to turn something that's a true, real commodity in the most basic sense? So it's just a plastic brick, without any intellectual property protection anymore. How do they turn a Lego brick into such a valuable resource? That is the key question. So this is what we would like to find out today, what we like to focus on. I'll kind of tell you a little story around Lego and how it came about to be such a successful company. And ultimately, we want to kind of understand and answer the question how Lego kind of creates that amazing value that we just have seen. So Lego today is one of the most prominent companies, especially in the toy industry. So they are the market leader, they're the most profitable toy maker in the world. It's a success story, sort of, Lego is popular culture these days. You have Lego films, Lego is in the movies. So Lego is really becoming kind of a household item, if you want, for many, many people around the globe. And as said, sort of financially, from a business sense, they're doing extremely well. The interesting thing here is that Lego does extremely well with one single product. So it's plastic bricks, the little toy figures that it has. That's the only thing that Lego does. So Duplo and the smaller version of it, Lego. That's it. You probably know some of the competitors of Lego, like Mattel and others. And of course, they have many, many, many different products. They constantly try to innovate and change things to adapt to consumer needs, market demands, and so on. They develop, new Barbies and God knows what in order to cater for new markets. Lego doesn't really do any of that. Yeah, they really stick to a very old product that's now more than 60, 70 years old, and yet they're so successful. Yeah, and it's not high tech. It's just a piece of plastic. So that is kind of the paradox, right? That they manage with such a simple product, with such a simple thing, to be so tremendously successful. So we could say, as a little test for what is to come, if we understand how Lego does it with a very simple product, maybe we with slightly more complex products, and surely you work in industries that have more complex products, maybe more technologically demanding products, that you will be able to kind of use what we learned from Lego to your advantage. So if it works for Lego, it will certainly work for you. So let's put it that way. So Lego, very successful company today. That wasn't always the case. So at the beginning, if you go back to 2000, Lego actually was in real trouble. Sort of Lego was really unsure where its business would go. Lego didn't really know how it should go further, how it should develop. That, of course, had a lot to do with the internet. It had a lot to do with the changing or the perceived change of needs of kids. And there was kind of a quote that I put up here on that slide from the Independent in 2000, the British newspaper, where the founder's grandson of Lego is being quoted that he's really worried about this instant gratification that children are looking for today. So they're not really willing to unwrap something and put pieces together and really play with things and kind of invest energy and so on into their toys. They want to have something where they can press a button and things, start to jump around. They come alive instantly. So as he said, we really need to move on with Lego. The grandson realized that Lego must forsake its ideals as an outlet for young imaginations and marry itself very closely to show business, and move with the times. So really become more technologically orientated, become more like entertainment. So for Lego, it was of course a big move, being this company that produces bricks, very traditional, very boring kind of thing, to becoming something that has more to do with entertainment. So that was like the big shift that they imagined. That's where they saw the business going. This is where they saw the kids, the customers going ultimately. So this is really what they wanted. Of course, the ideal that they had in mind was Disney, right? So become like Disney, you have your characters, but at the end you have kind of a whole landscape of different businesses, outlets, products, services, experiences that he would offer to children. He would become a brand that does movies, that has entertainment parks, theme parks, that of course sells comics and so on. So, but you would work across a whole range kind of different or through different channels to really develop a network around your core customer. So that was kind of the idea that they were really keen on pushing and kind of pursuing. And kind of question here for you guys, so setting off like our first poll. So how would you go about doing that? If you put yourselves in the shoes of Lego, how would you try to develop kind of this new identity for your company, this new strategy? So would you, A, look at competitors that are successful, benchmark yourself, try to identify best practice, get these others, diversify into profitable markets and develop your brand? Or, as option B, you could kind of more in an old-fashioned way, you look at your history, try to understand who you are, where you come from, and experiment with new ways of value creation. So what kind of option would you invest? Where would you put your money? So let's do a quick poll to see what.
All right, I'll leave the poll open for about 10 more seconds. And closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Okay, so Martin, the results of 42% of the participants would take option A, look at competitors, and 58% took B, look at your history and identity.
Some results, yes.
And here are the results for everyone.
Yes.
Okay.
So we see a little bit like where people are going, what they're voting for.
Sure, I can display one more time. So 58% of the respondents.
Put an out screen, sorry. Yeah.
So yeah, 58% of the respondents would say B, look at your history, identity, and experiment in new ways. And 42% took A, look at...
Eddie, sorry, I didn't hear that. Sorry about that. 80% would say...
No, 58. 58 took option B, and 42 took option A.
So the majority of you guys took option A. So I clearly can see you did a master degree in management. So you kind of read the textbooks, you look at your competitors, you do an analysis of the market, you try to develop profitable products around best practice and develop your brand. But this is a little bit what Lego did. So they had a lot of help from consultants, and they really tried to diversify. So if you look what happened kind of in the early 90s, so they were really a simple company that had only their plastic products, and then they started to diversify and really created a whole universe of Lego products. So there was Lego Music, there was Lego TV, Lego Retail, of course, Lego Theme Parks, Lego Dolls, Robotics, Learning, Concept Stores, there was Lego Software, there was still the figure-based play, and of course, right at the bottom, the construction play. But otherwise, they really kind of try to embrace that Disney philosophy and diversify and go into all sorts of different markets and use all sorts of different channels and develop strategies to really capture and kind of embrace the audiences wherever they went to. And that seems to be like, what the textbook suggests. This seems to be a good idea, a good strategy. They set up think tanks around the world, did lots of market research and so on. Yet for Lego, that resulted in a near-death experience. So what they did was they developed figures like the ones that you see here. So they really got away from the construction idea where you have to put things together and kind of made things more easy, simpler for people. So you just had a little figure and you opened the box and the little figure came out and you could instantly play with that figure. So they kind of really diverted from that old model of brick by brick, building with bricks, playing with bricks, towards the kind of new model, instant gratification, more attractive kind of figures, more attractive kind of colors, more attractive play themes that should appeal to new audiences, to new markets, to the children that would grow up in the internet age. That turned into total disaster for Lego. So there are a couple of like newspaper clips here, where one says picking up the pieces, Lego about to go bankrupt, stumbling block for Lego, the dinosaur, the firm was almost about to be bought up by its competitors. The family who still owns the company, had to put millions of euros into the company every month to keep it afloat. There was a real problem because the whole expansion, the whole kind of going into all these different markets, it cost a lot of money, really cost a lot of focus, and the firm was really in a very, very bad shape and lost an awful lot of money. So it kind of followed that textbook approach, and it didn't really turn out to be such a good idea for Lego. And of course, this is where we become very curious as researchers, where we would say, look, what did they do to recover from that kind of a terrible situation in which they were in, that near-death experience that kind of was inflicted by textbook logic, right? By that, what you learn in an undergrad degree, where people would say, look at the market leader, look at best practice, follow that. So what did Lego do to kind of recover from that and kind of bounce back and become kind of everybody's darling that it is now? This is the real story, or part of the story of Lego, and part of that story is definitely the story of co-creation and how kind of Lego discovered that its audiences, the people that it sold its products to, were actually not just customers, but that they were people that could add value to the company, that could actually do a lot of things with and to Lego that would create and produce value. So this is really the takeaway. This is really what I want to demonstrate to you guys over the next couple of slides with a couple of examples that hopefully will make you smile.
Martin, I have a question coming from Yogesh. Yogesh would like to understand what is unique about Lego that it has been a product which is easy to replicate and does not have a patent. Pardon me. There are many old single product companies which have closed down. The technology industry is a big example of this. So with Lego, what is unique about it that's allowed it without a patent to stay where it is within the market?
Well, I will show you now. To me, big part of it is its co-creation ability. So the big part, and I'm kind of jumping the gun here, but it's a really good question. The big part of it is that Lego, put itself in a position to kind of really see how customers, how the people that it interacts with, or the people who love Lego, who buy Lego, how they interact with the firm and how they can add value. So what Lego did is they created an ecosystem around itself, and in that ecosystem, they are irreplaceable. Yeah? So there's a very strong brand, there's a very strong connection to customers, to people that buy Lego, that play with Lego. So you can produce Lego bricks today, but that's not the point. You cannot recreate the experience, that the bond that Lego has with its customers. And I show you lots of examples of that in the next few minutes. That is the unique thing. That is the thing that you can't copy. This is the unique competitive advantage, if you want. Yeah? Everybody can copy technology, everybody can copy Lego bricks, but you cannot copy that way of working, that way of co-creating value. Yeah? So let me explain how that actually works for Lego, and then we can talk about how that might work for you in your settings, in your companies. The whole story started by accident. So this is a nice little irony in history that most of management innovation actually hasn't been kind of come out of business schools or universities, but a lot has happened in practice, and it has happened through serendipity. So Lego produced a kind of product, and some of you might recognize that as kind of Lego Mindstorm. It came out around 2000. It was one of the many things that Lego did at the time, and kind of, they had sort of their estimates of how much it would sell. And of course, they also knew who would buy it, because market research had suggested that it would be for older kids, sort of between 12 and 16, something like that. So they thought about moving 30, 40, 50,000 of those packets, and that would be a success. So once they hit the shelves, Lego realized that they were going extremely quickly. So people were really hungry, and they bought an awful lot of these Mindstorm sets, and they were quite expensive at the time. Yet people were kind of really eager to buy them. What Lego found out once they started looking into, well, why are so many of them, moving, and why are so many people buying them? They figured out that it is actually not kids nor their parents that buy these Mindstorm sets at all, but it's actually being bought by, people that work for IT companies. It's being bought by students in engineering schools. It's being bought by nerds. It's being bought by Lego adult fans that really like Lego and that like tinkering around with new products. So they were kind of quite surprised that that product was not something that was, being bought and being kind of consumed the way they expected it to be consumed, but it actually attracted a completely different audience, an audience that they didn't even know about. And that audience, to Lego's shock, one has to say, didn't behave the way a normal consumer behaves. So they didn't just buy the thing and then put it together at home. What they actually did is they kind of bought the Lego Mindstorm set and started to crack the code, reprogram Lego Mindstorm, put the code that they had created online, shared it with other people. So hundreds of manuals were kind of circulating virally very quickly, how you could make that Mindstorm robot do really cool things that Lego didn't have or hadn't programmed the Mindstorm robot to do. So they really kind of changed the product and advanced the product. And Lego was really taken back by that. Lego didn't know what to do. So that's my second poll for you guys, my second question, if we can make it work. What would you do if you was Lego? If you were Lego at that position. So you really figure out that somebody buys the product that is not your target audience, and they do not kind of behave in a way that consumers behave, but they kind of tinker around with the product, they kind of change it, they do other things. So what would you do? Question A, or answer, or possibility A. You stop users tinkering with your product, you take legal action. Or B, you do nothing, commission a couple of PhD projects and understand what is going on. So what would you do, A or B?
Okay, we'll leave the poll open for about 10 more seconds, and thank you everyone for voting. All right, and we're about to bring it to a close. Okay, and so Martin, we have only 12% selecting option A, and then an overwhelming 88% selecting B, do nothing and commission PhD researchers.
Oh wow! So I'm preaching to the converted here. You're clever. You're ahead of the curve. Of course, that is what Lego didn't do at the beginning. When they started and saw that phenomenon, they were actually quite shocked and taken back. And they said, well, users have to stop doing that because this is basically infringement of copyright. They really kind of do not respect, what we put together. They do not expect kind of the legal kind of ramification of all that. So we should actually sue them. We should really try to kind of, stop that thing, because this is not what is meant to happen. People are meant to buy something, they're meant to consume products, but in the way that we think they should. So this was kind of Lego's first reaction, but then it turned out to be extremely difficult to actually, put that into practice, to really sue people. It wouldn't have looked very good. So Lego kind of took a step back and did, as most of you suggested, started to observe and really started to have a close look at what actually happened in the community. Sort of, who were these people that were doing kind of things that, when you looked again, you figured out they're actually quite clever, actually quite interesting things. And these people seem to be very passionate about Lego. So Lego kind of, carefully, very slowly, kind of tried to understand what they do, and they did that through, very serious research of colleagues in Copenhagen and elsewhere, and tried to figure out what these users really did. And I give you now a couple of insights into what these users really did. So what they found, and this is absolutely fascinating, is that there were adult users of Lego that kind of really played with Lego way beyond their childhood. So if you see the picture here at top right, there's a couple of adults, and they meet up regularly, and they kind of have competitions where they, in this case, have to put together a set of Lego, but without seeing the bricks. So they're basically like blindfolded and have to put together kind of a Lego set, and whoever is first wins. So it's a tremendous commitment. These people are not being paid for by Lego. They're just adults that in their spare time, love Lego so much that they meet up and that they think about challenges like the one that you see up there, and that they engage in projects like this. And of course, that's a real community. It's almost like a tribe, that meets up and that is so committed to a product, so committed to the experience that you can get from a product, that it was very surprising for Lego. You can see that as well when you look at how these people talk to each other. So to Lego's surprise, they discovered that these people actually have their own language, have their own kind of, words and sayings and shortcuts and synonyms and so on for things that they develop and only they understand. So this is really like a little local tribe that has its own language that it developed over time in order to communicate with each other, and everything revolves around Lego and the experience of Lego. So a tremendously deep anthropological commitment to Lego that goes way beyond shallow, superficial consumer behavior. So Lego had to learn that there was this deep commitment to its product, to the identity of Lego. So about playing, about being creative, about putting something together, about constructing the world. So that was a very important message for Lego, to see the deepness of all that. Yeah. You also could see different communities doing very different things. So you see here the inauguration of Obama, and that was kind of reenacted with Lego. So people, without being paid by Lego, meet up and they rebuild that whole scenery on scale. So you really see how they tried to get the White House right, how they tried to get the Capitol right, how they tried to get the inauguration scene right, how they tried to get the people right, by playing with scale and with colors and so on. So there's a tremendous amount of love and effort and energy that goes into building things like that. In this particular case, you can see the community would be very much into accuracy, into history, into kind of getting things right. And of course, criteria for whether you do a good or not job, a good or not so good job, is this realistic, right? Is this something that really looked that way? You have other communities within Lego that don't share these values at all. So they have very different commitments, very different kind of set of principles that they aspire to. So you have here people that actually dream up outer space. So this is not about accuracy. This is not about real things that happen in history. This is all about things that we can only imagine, things that we want to be real, but they're actually not real. So it's about imagination. It's about fantasy. It's about dream worlds. And you can imagine these people are quite different. They meet at different times, and they have different hobbies. They probably have different hairstyles and so on, or haircuts. And you can imagine, that they're quite different people. So the Lego universe is a tremendously diverse universe with a lot of different communities, sub-communities that adhere to or kind of are organized around different values, around different principles. So for Lego, this is all tremendously important to know and understand. The community, but just doesn't meet up to build things and kind of develop or dream up landscapes that don't exist or reenact scenes that do exist. They go one step further. They actually build and develop new products that you can buy today on the shelf in the shop. So this is one example. It's Adam Reed Tucker. He's a trained and learned architect, and he's an American. And he at one point, kind of got a little bit fed up kind of with being an architect, and he loved Lego. You know, his whole life he was passionate about Lego. So he went off, you know, kind of gave up his job, bought an awful lot of Lego, and started to build historical buildings out of Lego. And so he risked his marriage with that. At least that's what he says in an interview, because his wife said, "Are you crazy doing that?" But he said, no, I think there's a real opportunity in that. We just, you know, can do with Lego so much more than just, you know, making toys or play themes or experiences for children. We really can, you know, do cool things, architectural things, things that are culturally valuable. We just have to think hard about it. So he started rebuilding these kind of famous buildings with the language of Lego, if you want, with bricks of Lego. And he was quite successful with that, and he made good progress. And he called up Lego one day and said, "Look, I think I have a new idea for you." And Lego said, "Look, sorry, we don't think this is a good idea, because nobody would buy buildings made or kind of remodeled with Lego. So, you know, we don't see any value in that." And he was persistent. He went back and said, "Well, look, you know, I designed a box for it as well, you know, because I really can see how it could be marketed." And Lego said, "Look, sorry, it looks great and fantastic idea, but not for us. You know, we don't believe in the idea." So he went out and kind of packaged up 100 of those boxes and sold them out of the back of his car, and went back to Lego and said, like, "Look, I actually proved that this concept works. People do buy these things. People do love these ideas." So eventually Lego kind of said, right, if it really works, you know, and if we can do an experiment around that, we'll see whether we can really start to produce these things. And the experiment was successful. People started buying these sets, and they're now, you know, part of the Lego family, the product family. And the really interesting, really important thing is that it's not just a product extension as you would think of in other cases, but it really puts Lego into a different sphere. So these Lego architecture packs you can buy in the normal kind of, in a normal kit shop, in a normal toy store, but you also can buy them in every museum around the world, in every MoMA, in every kind of culturally inclined shop, you know, that represents high culture in one or the other way. And that is, of course, a great achievement for Lego, that they're not just in the toy section of shops, but that they're now in a MoMA in New York, very prominently placed next to designer goods. Yeah? And this is where people buy Lego architecture. So it really propelled the brand. It propelled the whole, if you want, proposition of what Lego is, what it stands for, in a totally different sphere. The important thing, the takeaway, this was not produced by Lego. This was not an idea that they had through their own think tanks or labs or so on. There was something that came from a customer that was very persistent, that had ideas that went way beyond what Lego could imagine. So in this sense, there's real value creation. There's something really new coming from interacting with customers, initially against Lego's own imagination. Yeah, if it wasn't for the persistent Adam Reed Tucker, this product wouldn't be there today. It wouldn't be a source of revenue, of great profit for Lego, if it wasn't for him. Today he works on roller coasters and all sorts of other products, so you can kind of follow that up online. It's really interesting to see how he, as an important player, kind of also has developed with that. There are people who spend an awful lot of time to reenact films and movies and so on with Lego. So this is one of the award-winning kind of Lego amateur builders, if you want. She rebuilt Harry Potter scenes, as you can see here, and it's an amazing amount of detail, an amazing amount of love that goes into rebuilding something like that. Again, she does not get paid for by Lego, so this is really just a hobby. This is somebody who is passionate about Lego and who really thinks about new play themes, kind of new experiences that Lego hasn't thought about. And she kind of makes them real. She develops the product, she develops the theme, she develops the experience for Lego. There's also stuff that is less elaborate, it's more tongue-in-cheek, like this little Stephen Hawking figure as a Lego kit. So you see, it's just a couple of bricks being put together in a quite creative way, and everybody, you know, who knows the famous scientist Stephen Hawking would immediately recognize him with that little Lego figure. Again, that was done by a customer, by a co-creator, by an amateur out there somewhere, who kind of put together that little Stephen Hawking, and you can buy that now online. So somebody will package it for you, not a Lego company, but a customer, and send it to you, and you can kind of buy this little Stephen Hawking. Again, an idea that doesn't come from Lego, but it is developed in the ecosystem around Lego. The whole thing also takes on a quite organized phase. So you have websites like this one here, where people upload their ideas. Other people would come in and vote for these ideas and say, well, fantastic, I always wanted to have a Curiosity rover. I really would love to buy that product if Lego ever produced it. And Lego then will pick those kind of products, or these kind of crowdsourced items that are most prominently kind of valued or evaluated on the website. who you have here to the right is a guy who actually works or used to work for NASA, and he actually builds kind of these kind of robots that can drive on Mars. These like vehicles that can drive on Mars for NASA. And he always thought, like, how fabulous would it be if we had a Lego toy that would also do the same thing, and little kids could kind of get engaged with outer space and so on. So he built one of those and put it on that website, and people loved it. And today you can actually buy it in the shop, and that is the packaging. That's the guy who developed it. So again, it's a user that kind of had very creative ideas, very creative application, if you want, around what you can do with a simple product like Lego. So it's a quite fascinating kind of whole world that opens up around Lego. So we're going in the wrong direction here, I'm sorry. If you can skip this one. Yeah, I also want to show you a little video, because the whole thing is not just that there are new products, new developments that Lego does as such, but there are also whole new experiences that Lego kind of creates, or that people create with Lego. So this is a little clip from YouTube that has by now some 25 million views, and I'll just share the first 2 minutes with you. It's quite entertaining. So.
But there must have been a Death Star canteen, yeah? There must have been a cafeteria downstairs, in between battles, where Darth Vader could just chill and go down. I will have the penne alla arrabbiata. You'll need a tray. Do you know who I am? Do you know who I am? This is not a game of who the fuck are you? For I am Vader. Darth Vader. Lord Vader. I can kill you with a single thought. But you'll still need a tray. No, I will not need a tray. I do not need a tray to kill you. I can kill you without a tray, with the power of the Force, which is strong within me. Even though I could kill you with a tray if I so wished. For I would hack at your neck with the thin bit until the blood flowed across the canteen floor. Now the food is hot. You'll need a tray to put the food on. Oh, I see the food is hot. I'm sorry. I did not realize. Oh, tray for the... Yes. I thought you were challenging me to the fight to the death. Fight to the death? This is canteen. I work here. Yes, but I am Vader. I am Lord Vader. Everyone challenges me to a fight to the death. Lord Vader, Darth Vader. I'm Darth Vader. Sir Lord Vader. Sir Lord Darth Vader. Lord Vader of Cheam. Sir Lord Baron von Vaderham. The Death Star. I run the Death Star. What's the Death Star? This is the Death Star. You're in the Death Star. I run this star. This is a star. This is a fucking star. I run it. I'm your boss. You're Mr. Stevens. Who is Mr. Stevens? He's head of catering. I'm not head of catering. I am Vader. I can kill catering with a thought. What? I can kill you all. I can kill me with a thought. Just fuck. I'll get a tray. Fuck it. This one's wet. And this one's wet. And this one's wet. This one is wet, this one is wet. Did you dry these in a rainforest? Why? With the power of the Death Star, do we not have a tray that is fucking dry? I do not... No. I was here first. You have to form a queue if you want food. Can I have penne alla arrabbiata? That'd be very nice. No. Do you know who I am? That's Jeff Vader, that is. I am not Jeff Vader, I'm Darth Vader. What, Jeff Vader runs the Death Star? No, I run the Death Star. You Jeff Vader? No, I'm Darth Vader. Are you his brother? Can you get his autograph? I can't get it. No, I'm Jeff. All right, I'm Jeff Vader. I'm Jeff Vader. Can I have your autograph? No, fuck off. Or I'll kill you with a tray. Give me penne alla arrabbiata or you shall die. And you, and everyone in this canteen. Death by tray it shall be.
So I guess you got the idea. What this is all about. It's kind of quite entertaining. It has an awful lot of hits. And what happens here? The interesting thing is that first of all, it takes Lego online. So this was always the big challenge. Remember, in 2000, Lego being really worried about what online presence will it have, what role will it play in the digital world. Well, Lego as a brick, can't move there easily or physically, as we know. But Lego can become something that kind of inspires things that are then digitally very present. And that is one of these examples. It's a little clip that has been made by Eddie Izzard, an English comedian. He just spoke kind of their text. And then Lego users have used Lego creatures to reenact that kind of scene and put that online. So it's really kind of a mashup, if you want, a cultural mashup from professional comedian, Lego users using Lego to kind of do something that has tremendous resonance with kind of the mainstream and with kind of the zeitgeist, if you want. So it really pushes Lego into a digital sphere. Lego becomes something that is digitally consumed, that has a digital component to it. Again, Lego itself would have had a very difficult time. Lego tried to do computer games and so on, didn't really work out. But through these kind of initiatives, Lego has a very strong presence. You can look today, after our little chat here, you can go online and look at brickfilms.com, for instance. So this is a whole website only with Lego films. You will see hundreds and hundreds of films that are made by Lego amateurs that either reenact famous film scenes or whole new films, whole new plots that people imagine. There are film festivals, so Brick Film Festival is one of them, where people come together and show films. So, and then of course there are now the movies that you can watch in the big movies, in the big cinemas about Lego. So it really has become something that goes way beyond being a plastic brick. Yeah. But the argument here is it has not done that through sitting down, developing a strategy in the boardroom, but it has done so, and it has managed to do so in very close interaction, in co-creation with its customers. Yeah. So value creation was not kind of a one-way street. It was not Lego that had a great idea and then pushed it out, but it was kind of really discovering what people already did, and trying to resonate with that, amplifying some of these things, and creating an ecosystem, a community, if you want, around that. So this is really the recipe to success. And coming back to that very good question that that our colleague asked before, this makes it unique. This is very difficult. You go and copy the plastic brick, no problem, but you're not going to copy the 25 million hits that Lego has by now on YouTube for clips like that. It's a cultural good by now. Yeah? It has become something that is way more than a product. Yeah? So we'll come back to that because this is really important. So what is I'm just reading the technology here. So there's many other examples. So this is a New York-based lawyer who had enough of the law, and he decided to make artwork out of Lego. So it's brick art. So he exhibits his things in quite serious museums all around the world, and he reenacts famous paintings such as Munch's Scream here out of Lego figures, and he has exhibitions on that. So in the back there you see Clint's famous kiss. And that is what he does. So he really uses Lego as something that expresses, culture, expresses kind of, what he wants to see, how he wants to describe the world, or how artists have described the world, and expresses it just as well as you could do with a brush or with paint. Yeah? It's just Lego bricks that take the job or do the job. It's just another medium to become something that communicates culture at the end. And of course, that's what you want. This is another German artist. Kind of, I like him because what he does is quite clever and quite simple. He travels the world and uses Lego bricks to fill gaps in walls. And for him, if you look at kind of his story, and if you read up on him, and I really recommend to do that, he would say that Lego for him is a universal language. Lego is in many countries all over the world. Many people have this kind of close relationship to Lego through their childhood. And so it makes them smile when they see how he fixes gaps or problems in society with Lego. And so this is his language. So he also could, of course, use other materials. But Lego becomes a cultural product, a cultural artifact. So it's way beyond the plastic brick. It becomes something quite special. Again, you couldn't pay for that. You couldn't engineer that. You couldn't kind of have this as a resource in your company. You only can have experiences like that, articulations of your brand like that, in close interaction with customers. So only by building an ecosystem, you will have new innovative applications, if you want, that you couldn't have otherwise. Maybe last example from Lyon. You can also look up online. So this is a guy who is an artist, and he kind of is a photographer. And one of his little hobbies is to take pictures of Lego figures in really tricky situations for them. So this little Lego figure being attacked by a spider, a little Lego figure fighting cockroaches, or a little Lego figure kind of doing crazy, tricks on a bicycle. And it's just really sweet, to see, really kind of cute to see how Lego kind of is being used, in this way. And of course, that travels virally very quickly, very easily. And again, Lego here is not just it's not just a brick, it's not just a plastic figure, it's not just something you buy in a shop, but it becomes a cultural item. There's also very serious applications around Lego, and we could talk about them for a very long time. I'm afraid we don't have that much time. That's Lego therapy, so an American therapist. Kind of, he works a lot with children with autism, and they had kind of, he had in his practice an awful lot state-of-the-art tools to kind of interact with kids with autism, and they work more or less. But what he realized was that the kids that were waiting to see him for therapy, that the kids that were waiting in the waiting room, sometimes brought Lego with them. And one kid woke up together and say, "Oh, look, I have the same Lego. I really like your piece of Lego. Or, what are you doing with that? Or how have you built that?" So kids would actually start talking through Lego. So it would be a real kind of door opener, icebreaker, mediator for kids that have difficulties to relating to each other, to talk through Lego with each other. So and then Legov kind of really explored that further and really tried to turn that into something that is systematically used in therapy. And so we ended up writing that book on Lego-based therapy, where you really use Lego, for kids to kind of have difficulty expressing what they feel, to express it through Lego, and it has, in this sense, a very serious application. Again, think of that. It would not have been conceivable whatsoever to develop that in-house at Lego in an R&D lab. That only can happen if you have an ecosystem, a whole community of people around your product. Last example, maybe from architecture. So this is big architecture, very famous architecture company. They built a new headquarters of Google, for instance. They're in Denmark. They're at home in Denmark, where Lego comes from. They have been using Lego for a while to build models to help clients to imagine how the buildings would look like. So they work with Lego models to their clients, or build them with clients and say, "Look, this is how your headquarters would look like," and then they can change it around, of course, because Lego is so easily, changed and moved and kind of remodeled. So, what is the moral of the story? Sort of, what is it that we can take away from this kind of Lego universe and that Lego story? And I think this is really where I kind of try to seek the interaction with you to really also be challenged and be pushed on, well, what does that mean for us, in our companies, in our settings? Because that is, I guess, one of the key things in any MBA, EMBA education. What impact does it have on my practice? How does it change the way I go about doing things? So this is what we ultimately want to achieve. So what is the moral of the story? Let's go back to that simple diagram of the raw price of Lego being, very small, the sales price being very high. So where does that value come from? Well, when you buy Lego, this is the argument, when you buy Lego, you don't buy necessarily plastic bricks, because the plastic bricks, as said, you can set up a company today and build plastic bricks. That's not the unique selling proposition. That's not the advantage. Yeah. But what you do buy is you buy creativity, you buy fun, you buy playfulness, you buy a hands-on, minds-on experience. So, you need your mind to imagine things, you need your hands to put things together and play and try to make things realistic. So it's a real holistic, inclusive experience. And from all that follows that value doesn't roll off the assembly line. It doesn't come out of the factory. It doesn't come out of the boardroom. But value is co-created with customers in an ecosystem. Yeah, Lego makes the bricks, no doubt about that. But the stories, the experiences, that bring Lego alive, that make Lego an exciting thing, something that people love, that people pay a lot of money for, that is not being produced in a factory. You cannot make that roll off an assembly line. That can only be produced in interaction, very close kind of collaboration with consumers. This is what co-creation means at the end of the day. It brings things to life because it uses consumers' intelligence, narratives, kind of their imagination to kind of turn your product into something that you could not imagine. Lego is very well aware of that. So today, this is one of Lego's key advantages. This is a senior Lego manager who is in charge of community development and other things. His slides, this is from one of his presentations. His slides have this ecosystem there. Well aware that there's Lego, it's a little company sitting in Billund in Denmark, producing bricks. Something that is very old-fashioned. There's no technology there. Anybody can copy that, but that's not the point. That ecosystem around of people that kind of co-create with them. That is something that is very, very difficult to copy or imitate. Yeah? And at the same time, it creates value. It brings innovation. It brings new ideas that are very, very hard to reproduce or imagine within the boundaries or within the walls of an organization. So, Askels is, on record of saying, I guess many people say that we need to be aware that 99.99% of the smartest people in the world do not work for us. They're somewhere else. Yeah. So think of the architect who develops Lego architecture. Think of the therapist. Yeah? Think of the guys who do the YouTube clip. You can't hire all of them, but they're out there. They have a connection to Lego. They can do something for your product. So the tricky question is now, of course, about how does that change the way we think about organization? How does that change the way we think about management? So This is a very deep question, a very fundamental question, one that we should discuss in much more detail and probably live. But I want to give you kind of a little, at least a little teaser, so that we stay in touch about these questions, and you can read up on these questions and kind of think more about them. We have a very old model of value creation, and that model hasn't been changing, or hasn't changed in more than 200 years. So the guy that you see here at the bottom, that's Adam Smith, who talked about the pin factory. Some of you might know The Wealth of Nations, his famous book, where he starts off with describing how value is being produced. And for him, the world is a very simple world. You have a pin factory, locus of value creation is within the factory, you have division of labor, you have a manager who tells the workers how to do things more efficiently, and production or productivity increases, and the more you produce, the more kind of you can sell. It becomes cheaper for customers, but you will make more revenue, more turnover, at the end more profit. And that is kind of the story. Sort of on the one hand, you have production, value creation, management, and on the other hand, you have consumption, which is passive. Consumers don't do anything, they just choose. Yeah, they're very passive people, they just vote with their money. And if we want to know a little bit from them, well, when we do market research, and of course we learn through their buying decisions whether they like or do not like something, but by and large, they're very passive. And that is still today the blueprint for how most organizations work, how most kind of management is set up. So on the Adam Smith side, you have all the functions from HR, accounting, finance, R&D, and so on, and each of them kind of works on a little part of the organization and then pushes it out to the consumer. But with Lego, we really have to change the way we understand an organization. We really have to rethink that image of production on the one hand, consumption on the other hand, kind of management being in charge, the visible hand kind of telling people what to do, consumers being passive users. We really have to rethink that kind of simple model that has been with us for 200 years and think of value creation in a more complex way. Think of organizations as platforms, like Lego being a platform that produces or kind of allows people to play on their platform with its products, develop new things, develop applications, develop new experiences, new play themes, and so on. But there's a very, very close interaction within that ecosystem, and value in that ecosystem is ultimately co-created. So there's not one value creator, one producer, but it is actually something that really happens in interaction. So this is a very, very complex change, and we are right in the middle of it, I think, and it will take a couple of years for that change to sink in. But of course, we can see the signs of that change everywhere. When we look at Uber, Airbnb, and so on, these are the signs of times that are changing very rapidly from that very linear model to a much more integrated, co-created model. At Lego, we have seen kind of how that shift can happen and how Lego actually managed that shift and how Lego now benefits from that shift. So it should give us some reassurance that we can do it as well. Lego could do it. We can learn from their mistakes. We can learn from their decisions and maybe make it better when we try to transform ourselves and ready ourselves for a more dynamic economy. So maybe this is a good time to kind of play the ball back to you guys and ask you, how many of you work in very traditional, very hierarchical firms, and how many of you are already experimenting with platforms as part of ecosystems and already kind of trying to broaden kind of the actors that are kind of included in value creation. So if you can do this last little poll, maybe we can kind of get a good sense of where you guys stand and where you guys want to go.
We'll leave it open for just a few more seconds. All right. So Martin, we have a 64% of the audience working at a traditional hierarchical firm and only 36% using a platform as part of an ecosystem.
Well, this is a lot, sort of you're a very innovative audience. A lot of you already are, partaking in a very, very exciting experiment that is not an experiment in producing a new product, but it's an experiment in producing new forms of organization, new forms of management, really. So this is really, really exciting. For the others of you who are in more traditional firms, what will increase in the next years, in the decades to come, is kind of the pressure to open up and to collaborate with people in your environment. No matter whether you work in consulting firms, in accounting firms, whether you work with products, technology, and so on, more and more will become an ecosystem around you, simply because, just like Lego, 99% of the smartest people on the planet probably do not work in your firm, but they're somewhere nearby your firm, so you will have to find ways of integrating them. That's kind of my last message for you, and maybe the thing that we really need to, creatively and jointly think about together. It's a quote by 2 colleagues from Harvard. I think they put it kind of quite succinctly when they said we have to put as much energy and intelligence into designing systems for organizing work outside company walls as we do for work within them. Sort of, we had, since Adam Smith, an awful lot of experience in organizing work inside company walls. We have been very, very good at creating deep hierarchies. We've been very good at, creating matrix organizations. We've been very good at developing leadership theories and accounting tools and you name it, yeah. But we are just at the beginning to explore how we can create tools, how we can create systems to organize what Lego does, to really go out and say, how can we orchestrate the conversation of an ecosystem? We most definitely cannot direct it, we most definitely cannot manage it in a way that we manage a salaried employee. We also cannot incentivize it in the same way. Yeah? We have to have other tools, perhaps softer tools, of kind of getting people to engage in collective action. I think this is really kind of where we are at. This is really the big burning question. It's the $1 million question, if you want. And I kind of can only invite you to kind of try to answer that question together through lots of experiments, because I don't think we'll have a textbook where everything will be written up. So lots of experiments, practical experiments, learning from interesting companies, but then a lot of reflection, sitting down, thinking about the principles of co-creation and how we can distill these principles so that it actually becomes something that is useful for you as a tool. I kind of tried to do that a little bit by kind of thinking about traditional, organizational designs and how they're kind of changing in that world of ecosystems. And if you will see that, a lot of leadership theories that deal with motivation of internal employees, they probably become less relevant. Yeah, what it is more about is mobilizing and kind of trying to channel and create external resources. So the big question for you guys is, where are those interesting people? Where are the Adam Tackers, for my organization? Yeah, where are the people that have great ideas, that have, great kind of new ways of applying my product, my service that I don't know about? So how can I find them? How can I mobilize them? How can I motivate them to kind of be part of my ecosystem? The second thing is the design of hierarchies. Like I said before, we are very good at creating deep hierarchies, layers of hierarchy, where kind of information flows up and kind of instructions flow down, and then we have kind of meetings and all sorts of other things to break up that structure a little bit. I think we're going to move to a world where you have less of that hierarchical design and many, many more interfaces. So to some extent, you have to really think about how can you become more edgy, not in the sense of becoming more edgy, in the sense of more cool, but how can you design these edges so that people that have relevant ideas, that have relevant information for you, can kind of input things into your organization and you can talk to them. So think of conferences, think of events, that Lego sets up, for instance, but also, of course, think of online interfaces that can help to create an exchange of information, a flow of ideas, feedback between internal and external. Yeah. So at the moment, we are very good at communicating internally, but we are not so good at kind of really broadening and saying, where are these relevant people and what are the different interfaces we have so we can communicate with them, we can talk to them. So multiply your interfaces, really think about how you can reach out and kind of get information, get knowledge, get kind of feedback through the door and be open to that and process that. So this is the challenge of communication, if you want. Yeah? The challenge of kind of differentiation and integration, so the traditional division of labor, that of course works in a hierarchy when I know exactly who is doing what. So I know, who's teaching a course, I know who's doing research. So in a closed system, it works quite well. In an open system, I have to act and think, slightly differently. I have to think about kind of participatory architectures. I have to think about, can I make my product modular? Can I make it granular so that people with different motivations, skills, and commitments can kind of do something with my product? Yeah. So simple example, think of Wikipedia. We all use Wikipedia. Some of you might write for Wikipedia, but no matter how committed you are, no matter how motivated you are, and no matter how much skill you have, how much you want to bring to the table, yeah. Wikipedia has for each of us a little offer. So if you want to write a new article, go ahead and do it. You can edit your own thing. If you want to contribute to an article, you can do that as well. If you simply want to, report something, you can do that. But by simply reading and clicking through Wikipedia, you also contribute to the system by showing the system what is relevant, what works, which links are actually really strong, which links are weaker. So lots of ways of participating. Yeah, really clever architecture in the sense of how can people do things. Yeah. So Lego thought very long, very hard about that. We can talk about that more. I think it's a really key thing. Last but not least, internally, we are very good with performance management systems, and we control pretty much anything and everything that happens in an organization. But externally, it's very difficult because I can't control Adam Tucker and what he develops, how long he takes for his development. It's also not that relevant, yeah, because it's not a priori kind of decision whether he will get the resources to do something, but, well, he takes the resources to do something, and then after he's built it, I have to evaluate whether it's good or not. What platforms, open systems, ecosystems rely on is very much kind of distributed evaluation. So again, think of companies like eBay, think of companies like Airbnb. It would be very, very difficult for Airbnb to really evaluate whether you had a good night's sleep, in one of the Airbnb providers' apartments, and the other way around would be very difficult to evaluate whether you were a good host or a good guest. Well, they just outsource that and say, look, we don't know what's good. We can't even control, the value creation in this sense. We can't control the product. So why don't we let the customers become middle managers and they evaluate the product for us? Yeah? Think of Uber. Uber has no clue about the quality of rides if it wasn't for people who kind of use the app and say this was a good ride, this was a bad ride. Yeah? So this is evaluation really kind of being distributed, the whole infrastructure evaluation, that at the end of the day, creates quality standards, it creates kind of a level of consistency that you ultimately and absolutely want to ensure and have. At Lego, think back of the website where people could vote for the product that they like best. Yeah. So it's not Lego saying we are smarter, we can control and kind of really evaluate what people do, but it's also opened up to some extent. Yeah. But these design principles, these new principles that you have here, they're really important because they address the old problems of communication, collaboration and control, but in a very different way than they're being addressed in hierarchies. Yeah, these questions are still questions that we have to answer as managers, as people that work in organizations. That will not happen by itself. So that's the key message. The open, doesn't organize itself. It's not, Airbnb doesn't happen just because out of nothing. There is design behind it. There's thought behind it. It's about the intelligent kind of interface between kind of the core of the platform and then the interaction with a much wider ecosystem. So I have a little kind of checklist for you, kind of as my last slide, as kind of questions that you can kind of ask to take things forward. So that if you want to discuss with colleagues or startup, entrepreneurs that you are interested in, maybe there are some questions that can help you to at least get kind of some ideas flowing. And these questions are very much related to, well, how do you identify a collective? How do you communicate? With these people, so interface design, how do you collaborate? So how do you make sure that people can actually input despite the fact that they have different skills and motivations and commitments? And finally, how can you control what that ecosystem does? Because at the end, you want to assess risk and you want to control or ensure standards and have a level of quality in your product range. So I think this is all the things that we can take away from Lego. So this is all the really interesting kind of findings, and I hope that some of those will make sense to you and apply to you. You can tinker around with them. I'll leave it at that. So you have my email, you have Paula's email. So very happy to kind of talk more about it later on or send you literature on that. So this is really what we're very passionate about. So feel free to pick up the ball a bit later. But I believe we also have a little bit of time left now for discussion, if I'm...
Yes, that's correct. We have a few questions coming from the audience, and thank you everyone who's stayed on thus far. And we'll take maybe 3 or 4 questions just in respect to time, and then we'll close out. I'll start with a question from Ida, and she would like to understand how can Lego keep those values that you mentioned during the presentation and their ecosystem going in a market like China, where kids are not expected to play with toys after age 6, and there's so high competition on the market?
Yeah, you look, there's no silver bullet, so there's nothing that you can say, take Lego and take it to China, it will be exactly the same. You have to work and think with the principles. So where's the opportunity to kind of open up and kind of try to engage an audience that have a different cultural background, that has different values, different expectations, their parents have different expectations, and how can you create for them or co-create with them an experience that is just as powerful as Lego. So I don't believe that Lego works everywhere, right? Lego is a very kind of basic plastic brick. It's very simple, so it can't work everywhere. But the principles of co-creation, they can work in many, many settings. So it would be a question of, well, what is the concrete audience I want to engage with in China? What do their parents want? What are their fears? What are their kind of dreams? What are their wishes? What do they do with their children? And then trying to build an ecosystem around that. The questions that Lego answered remain pretty much the same in another context. The answers will be radically different.
Okay, great, thank you. Our next question is coming in from Brian. He'd like to understand, as you know, last fall, Lego had a global layoff, and they're currently in the midst of a pretty large reorganization. Can you bring us up to speed as far as where they are now, and to what degree there's yet another sea change happening as we speak?
At which company?
At Lego. There's a he said there's a
I'm
layoff.
I'm neither part of Lego nor do I get paid by Lego, nor am I on what happens there. So I'm sorry. I
can't answer that one. Okay.
The key thing is like how value creation happens, how they become profitable, when they decide or what they decide to reorganize internally. I couldn't comment on, so I'm really sorry.
Okay, got it. No problem. So then we'll take. Sorry, one moment here. So from Eduardo, and I think we'll make this the last question. How can organizations structured under traditional hierarchy model spark or motivate co-creation model of conducting business?
How they can motivate that. So I guess, if you think, maybe this is a really nice last question, so thanks for that. If you sit there with your colleagues and you say, look, there's a trend towards co-creation, but it doesn't work, or this is like, we are hierarchy, we are different. I think if you look at the benefits, they are tremendous, they are massive. So we see them in our everyday lives around us. How companies like Uber are valued way higher than General Motors. How Lego has done extremely well out of kind of opening up and through serendipity, luck, and so on, has kind of struck gold, if you want. Yeah. So there's a lot of examples that are kind of at least should make us curious how we can use elements of that ecosystem thinking. I think it would not be the right thing, for everybody and everything to kind of throw everything open and go like, right, tomorrow. That is not how it will work. It will work in a coordinated way that you have platforms. There will be platform owners, that are very good at managing the core. There's still a Lego corporation, very good at managing the core, managing the brand. But then value creation itself will be something that has several layers to it. And we have to be quite clever around this whole architecture. Think back of the slide. We're very good at designing hierarchies. We are just about to understand how we can design and create systems for work outside of company walls. And that is really where we ought to go, what we have to do. So we have to be very curious, learn from examples, be inspired, sort of to motivate ourselves to really make change and try new things. I think if you get it right, the reward is potentially very high and very big. So it's definitely worth the journey.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Martin, for a wonderful and engaging presentation. We thank you to everyone who attended with us today with our webinar with EMLYON. And I'll just turn over to you, Martin, for any final words, and we hope that you all join us again in the future.
Yeah, well, I thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you. Thanks very much for great questions, and I'll hand over to Paula to have the very last word.
So thank you again. It was an absolute pleasure to have you all here. If you would like any more information, please do not hesitate to contact our recruitment managers that are on the screen at the moment. You will also receive an email from Ivy Exec on our behalf as well with these contact information. So thank you very much, and we hope you have a wonderful day, evening, morning, wherever in the world you are.
All right, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.